Hey YouTube, I am Tiberius and you're about to watch an edited recording of a Twitch stream. You can check out my Twitch using the link in the video description. If you enjoy the content, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel. Thank you and enjoy the video. This one again doesn't have a download. Were you good in school learning other languages? Absolutely not. I cannot speak a foreign language. Okay, well this is SQLi. Can you log in as admin? Okay, chat, what are we going to do here? Code is another language? Not really. Most code is just English. I'm going to time you out, Manicus. We're not doing or 1 equals 1. Why don't we do or 1 equals 1, chat? Why is the first thing we try not or 1 equals 1? Why is or 1 equals 1 the very last thing we try? Single quote would be good, yeah. Oh boy, it's actually giving us... It's giving us the query. On Twitter, you said it could damage systems. Yes, exactly. Okay. So, if we just do this. You can only execute one statement at a time. Okay. So we'll do double dash dash. Okay. So we can probably just do this because we've already been told the username. Boom. Very quick and easy SQL injection. No metakin. Let's explain why that worked. Okay, so basically the SQL query, let me zoom in. Looks like this, where we have the username, input, and password, input. And we have a users table, which presumably has at least an ID, a username field, and a password field, right? And in this table, we have, let's just say, the admin user, not going to do commas, and their password is something random. Okay, and we may have Tiberius in here as well, and his password is clearly just password. All right. So the way a login works, select. Basically, this just means all. So select all columns from the user's table, where the username in a specific row equals whatever we've given it, and the password in whatever row equals the password input. So if we give it the username input admin, right, and the password input of this, select all from users where the username equals this and the password equals this. Well, that only is one row. Okay, so this is how logins used to work. It's very rare to find something like this anymore, but so if we can inject, you notice there's a single quote here. If we put a single quote right? Actually, I'll tell you what, let's not do that. Let's copy this entire query. And we'll see what the query looks like when we just place these values into it, okay? Okay. So it looks lovely, right? The admin string has single quotes on either side. The password string has single quotes on either side. So let's say that we instead, we did before, let's just put a single quote there. I'm just going to put a password of A. Okay. So now we instead have that and that. Okay. So this query looks fine all the way up to here. Right? So you have the string admin surrounded by single quotes denoting that it's a string. But then you have one of these single quotes on its own. And then you have an and password equals, and the password string is surrounded there. So in SQL, unless a single quote is escaped properly, it needs to have a partner. Okay? Quotes like having partners. Alright, so this quote here has a partner here. This quote technically has a partner here. So really, this is the quote that's kind of annoying everything. But for the sake of argument, we're just going to focus on this one. And so this is an invalid query. It's going to break. So there's a few things you can do to fix that query. What we did was we basically just said, hey, comment out everything after this. Okay, so this, a double dash followed by a space, is a MySQL comment. Actually, it's a comment in every single SQL language. The reason I put a third dash, right, is you need a space, right? A space has to appear. If this was just dash dash, right? So if I just did dash dash like that, this is not valid. This is not a valid comment, all right? Because immediately after the dash dash, there is a single quote. So you might ask, okay, but why don't you just put a space, right? Like that. And that can work. Absolutely, that can work. Chat, I've talked about this on the stream before. Anyone, for extra bonus points, why is this a bad idea? Why might this sometimes fail? Kettlebell has it. Trimming. Some systems, they will take the username input and they will say, hey, trim it, please. Right? Just in case a user's accidentally put a few spaces. Okay? Because depending on how strict your database is, right, the username admin might not be equal to the username admin with a space. Right? And so if you don't generally allow spaces in usernames, or you don't allow trailing spaces in usernames, for example, then you might want to trim the username input just to reduce the number of login errors that users have. So if this happened, right, then suddenly the space that we had right here, there's a space right there. Now, when it gets placed into this SQL query, it disappears. And now our comment is invalid. But if we put another dash, this could be anything, by the way. I used to do dash dash A. I've recently just do dash dash space dash because it's just easier. If you put a dash end there, right, now there's no trailing. Yes, there's a space, but there's a character after it. So when you trim it, the space still remains there. And so does this. Okay, so this is one way of ending the query. Basically, it's just going to select all rows from the users table where the username equals admin. That's one row. Okay, so this basically will just select rows from the users table where the username equals admin. It doesn't care about the password. Password could be anything. All right. Now, there are instances where maybe this won't work. And in that case, you can sometimes be screwed. You may there are instances where you need to use or, for example. Okay, because you can't unfortunately use an and 1 equals 1 here. Because if you use that, then technically we still have the and password field. So there are instances where or is sometimes necessary. It's just it should never be your go-to. Can we use admin? Yeah, sometimes you can use that. It might work in this case. I'm not sure. Admin. No, okay. So it didn't work in this case because SQLite 3 said, hey, you can't execute multiple statements. We might actually be able to do something. We could obviously do an admin with a comment, but again, that just kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah. SQL injection is difficult. That's a piece of cake. Oh, right. So that's a good question, actually. It's and 1 equals 1, or just and in general, is very useful for blind SQL injection. Okay. Or inferential, as we should say. So let's just go back to, where do we have? Oh, screw it. So admin test. Okay. How is this going to work? Okay. Let's try that. Okay, good. So, how can 1 equals 1 be dangerous? Well, I'll explain that in a minute. Thanks for stopping by, Coppers. So, if you think we have an SQL injection, but you aren't seeing an error message in the response, let's just ignore the error messages that were down here somewhere, right? And let's just say there isn't anything really in the response related to what our injection does, okay? So it's not loading any information related to admin. But when we inject and 1 equals 1, okay, we see this. Now, this is a flag, but let's just imagine it was just a welcome message or something. All right? Or it could be anything, actually. It could be a cookie being set. It's just something. And if we change this to 1 equals 2, it disappears. Right? Oh, hang on. I need to turn off regex. Okay. So and 1 equals 1 and 1 equals 2. Very handy for telling whether an SQL injection, whether an inferential or blind SQL injection is in fact an SQL injection. Okay? Because sometimes you don't have something nice. In fact, a lot of the times. In fact, a few weeks ago I found 53 of these things. And there was nothing to indicate there was an SQL injection other than when I did a single quote, I got a 500 internal server error. When I repaired it, I got a 200 back, which is already indicative. That's good. But then to further test it, I did an and 1 equals 1 and I got my original response. So basically, my and 1 equals 1 payload had the same response as just sending the regular initial
New subscription
value.
received. Dispensing
All right?
gratitude.
So
Gratitude dispensed.
this string here, this input here, that's actually just forget about the password. Forget the password wasn't there. So this username equals admin gave us the same result as this username admin single quote and 1 equals 1 dash dash space dash. Okay, but crucially, because that doesn't necessarily mean it's an SQL injection, that might just mean that this literally is meaningless. Okay, when I changed it to a 1 equals 2 and and 1 equals 2, this gave me an invalid response, or something not like this. So in fact, let me, because this is important, because a lot of people just use ORs and it's really silly. So imagine that this was just like a search user function, okay, right? Not a login. So username equals admin gave us a 200, okay, and it just says, well, it just gives us a 200, okay. Nothing in the response. Okay, username equals admin this gave me a 500. So server error, internal server error, whatever. Okay, this gave me a 200, okay. And this gave me a 404 not found. Okay, this screams SQL injection. Okay, we have a valid username that gets us a valid response. We inject some SQL breaking string, in this case, just a single quote. We get an error. We repair that injection and stick an and 1 equals 1. This is our test case. We get the same result as before. And then this is the step that people just forget to do. Like, you get really excited at this point. You're like, yay, I found SQL injection. Maybe, maybe not. This is the step that confirms it all. You turn this 1 equals 1 into a 1 equals 2. Suddenly, this doesn't matter anymore. This could be anything, right? Because you have an and, well, this matches at least something. But an and 1 equals 2 means this has to be true for any result to be returned. Okay? But it's not true. So this entire statement is false, which means you get a 404 because there is no username equal to admin where 1 is also equal to 2. Okay? So, multiple steps. Now, can you do the same thing with OR? No. Username equals admin. 200, okay. Let's just do this. You still get this. This is fine. All right. Let's do this one. Or 1 equals 1. Yeah, you get 200, okay. Fine. And then this one. Or 1 equals 2. You get 200, okay. Because of course you do. This doesn't matter anymore. Right? So in this case, this matched. So this doesn't even get run. This is irrelevant right now. And in this case, the or 1 equals 2, it doesn't matter. This already matched. This is true. This doesn't matter.
Thank you for following.
Doesn't the or require less steps? Break with a single quote, fix with an or? But the problem with or, as I've explained in the past, is sure, select all from users where username equals admin or 1 equals 1 and password equals whatever. Sure, that'll log you in. Right? As long as this doesn't get shoved into a delete somewhere. Delete all from sessions where your username equals admin or 1 equals 1. Right? Or an update. This is why all 1 equals 1 is dangerous. This is why SQL doesn't use all 1 equals 1 unless you tell it, hey, you can be super dangerous and risky. You inject an all 1 equals 1 into a select statement, there's a few things that can happen. Firstly, sure, it can bypass logins if you don't have valid username. But in some cases, no. Because what happens, say, if you have a username check where you say check rows equals 1, right? So with a login, you only expect 1 row to be returned from the statement, the SQL query, which matches the username and password. So a very common login check, hey, is how many rows were returned from this query? Was it 1? Okay, then we log the user in. If it's not 1, then we don't do anything. Yeah? So this could actually fail. This could fail catastrophically for people, thinking that they can use it to bypass logins. But actually, no. This might not bypass logins. The other thing is it's going to load the entire users table, which is generally okay because users tables aren't usually too big. But if you're using it in some kind of articles or documents table and it loads all the documents into memory, that's bad. And the third reason is this thing. That applies to AND as well in your fix step. What applies to AND? If an AND gets injected into this delete, it does nothing. Right? It does nothing to change this query. This query was always going to happen with the admin username. Okay? Because that's the input. And an AND 1 equals 1 does nothing to change that. Okay? It's still going to match every row from sessions where the username equals admin and where 1 equals 1, which is always true, but it's not going to be an OR. So the row still has to match the username here. Don't get me wrong, there are instances where all 1 equals 1 you kind of have to use, but it should never be your first thing. And there are instances where it's just silly to use it, like this. Alright, rant over. On the screen are my socials. Please follow me on Twitter, join the Discord server, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and of course follow me on Twitch to get alerted when I go live. You can also find all these links in the video description.